welcome to the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and this is your checkpoint for video game news, reviews, and hot takes that nobody asked for. My friends, the video game industry is on fire. Everything is horrible, and there's nothing that God can do to save you. That's right. We have more confirmed layoffs at Bungie. We have Xbox price increases, cancellations of more studios. We have Grand Theft Auto costing $80, just being a code in a box. We have the Steam machine being unaffordable. We have PlayStation not allowing discs for the PlayStation consoles moving past 2028. Are you kidding me? Goodness gracious, this truly was a week that just kept giving horrific news. And we're going to be going through it all. We're not even going to touch impressions this week because we have so much news. A lot of research went into this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud of it. So I hope you enjoy this burning dumpster fire of a podcast that I'm about to get into. But before we do that, I have a few housekeeping items I'd love for you to take into consideration. First off, if you happen to be listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, any of your favorite podcast distribution services, why don't you give us a rating? Maybe a like, favorite, comment, review, anything really. We're happy to have it. It's very kind of you to take your time and do so. It helps the algorithm, which is all that matters on the internet now. So thank you very much for doing that. On top of that, we're also on all of your favorite social media platforms. The internet is a wonderful, adventurous place with only happy people in the comments section. So while you're there, you can follow us on any of your favorite social media platforms. That's right, your X or Twitter, whatever you prefer, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We're there on all of them at Plug in Play Pod 1. Don't forget it. And while you're down there, you can leave a comment, and I will actually read it out on the show. That's right. You can be a part of the show. If you read us, or if you give us a comment down there, we will read it out on the show as part of our Comment Corner, one of my favorite segments in the ongoing podcast episodes, along with an email address, which is pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. If that is too long for you, it is in the description. You can send a question there as well. If you're afraid other people will see it, I can read it privately and then read it publicly on a podcast. However your preference is, we have multiple avenues for you to engage. And while you're down there, there's also some timestamps, wondrous timestamps. If you don't like what I'm saying, or if you just want to hear me talk about something else, you have timestamps down there to just skip right to what you want to hear. It's a labor of love. I do it for you. And that is our housekeeping, ladies and gentlemen. Now, like I said, it has been a crazy couple of weeks here. Genuinely, every day I was like, oh, dang, this is going to be a crazy podcast. And then 2 days later, something would happen to be like, oh, dang, this is going to be a crazy podcast. And then another 2 days would go by and I'd be like, holy frick, we need to slow down. Like, there's not enough time in the day for me to do the research on these topics to then put them into the podcast. So here we are. We have like 5 different topics that are all absolutely horrific, some of which are cold turkey at this point. And I'm not talking about quitting cold turkey. I mean, they're just cold meat that you don't want to care about eating anymore because you only want to really eat the hot meat. That's what I mean by cold turkey. Obviously, the newest, craziest news out there, only a couple of days in the making, is PlayStation cutting discs. We're going to get into that, and I have a lot to say about that. I'm a big physical guy. I really believe in physical media. I really appreciate and prefer physical in a lot of cases. So I personally am going to have a lot to say on that. We have Xbox continuing. This is being recorded on a Friday. That tends to be where I try to record now, because I'm typically kind of busier on the weekends. But in this case, Oh my gosh. We're expecting massive layoffs for Xbox starting Monday. So the day after or the day before I would post this podcast, you'll be getting it on Tuesdays. And I'm probably just going to cut intermittently during that segment because right now we're not 100% sure on what the layoffs are going to be, and we're going to have very easy confirmation on Monday because that's when the financial quarter ends. So that's when Microsoft is going to start letting heads roll. We obviously have a lot of ideas on what is going to happen, but I feel like I'm getting into the news already. So I should probably start the podcast in, the general sense because here we are. We're already 5 minutes in. I genuinely think even without impressions, this is going to be a 2+ hour episode. So we're going to get into it. I will not, however, skip the comment corner. I do appreciate all of my viewers. Anybody who leaves a comment, I am very, very grateful, incredibly grateful. You think I'm not? You think you're just posting random characters onto a post on the internet for some weird another white guy with a podcast? Yeah, that's me. I know. But like, it means a lot. It means a lot to know that somebody actually wants to engage with what I'm saying, even if you just say something like, I agree. It's like, okay, cool. I appreciate that. That makes me feel good, actually. Most people don't say that. Most people say you're retarded. I hope you die, which is not as encouraging, but saying that you agree is very much so. In this case, we have an Instagram comment from Marcus.exe on one of our Instagram shorts, specifically the Xbox content. I posted a lot of Xbox shorts that did very well over the past couple of weeks, which, like Microsoft went through a bunch of, that was when they announced they were going to start cutting heads, letting studios out the door. It doesn't look good over there if you're anybody who isn't Activision. Like that just it's not a good place to be right now. But a lot of people came and actually defended Microsoft in those comments. It was an interesting time because it was I always hear about people talking about Xbox fanboys. Xbox fanboys left and right. They're just nobody's gonna nobody can get through to these guys. They're all out there just defending Microsoft no matter what they do, no matter how bad of a decision they make, no matter how horrible it looks. They're out there and they're just going to defend Microsoft. And I'm like, I don't really engage with the people who are very hardcore into Xbox because I'm not a hardcore Xbox guy. So I don't ever see those conversations. So when I hear people say that they're seeing those conversations, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because I genuinely look at Xbox, I'm like, I don't know why you would still be around. Like, why would you truly want to still be a part of the Xbox ecosystem? Not only would you want to be a part of it, but why would you defend it? Like, I can almost understand somebody being like, well, I've been investing in this brand for the last 20 years or my entire life or whatever the case is, and they have all of my games, and I kind of need this platform to survive because that's where all of my stuff is, which we're going to get into later with PlayStation and the whole disc debacle, killing physical. But, like, let's say all of their digital and physical purchases are wrapped up into Xbox. Of course you need that to survive. Like, you have thousands of dollars and probably thousands of hours of content of your life wrapped up in this particular service, in this platform. Of course you don't want it to die. So I understand somebody being like, hey, I really wish Xbox would do better. I intend on staying here because I'm just so invested in the ecosystem. I really can't leave. Like, I understand that. But that's not the comments I'm getting on these videos. They're typically like, hey, you're dumb. Like, honestly, I just love Halo and Gears, and as long as I have that, I don't give a frick. Like, I'm going to stick with Xbox till the day I die. And I don't understand that mentality. That is a hard, nostalgia play, as far as I can tell. Is you grew up with Xbox, you are attached to this brand because it is nostalgic to you. You grew up on Halo, you grew up on Gears, which is fine, and you are refusing to move to anywhere else or even recognize that Xbox is making mistakes. I think the latter is the problem. Like, you can stay there, that's fine, but just being like, yeah, dude, I refuse to acknowledge that there's problems here. I don't understand that. That is you are blindfolded in that ecosystem if you are truly like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong going on over here at Xbox. But here, Marcus EXE, he leaves me a comment, and it was a point that I did not mention in any of my previous talks on the podcast about Xbox closing down all these studios. So he says, all the releases of smaller stuff on Game Pass failed miserably. You're right about Halo, and the Gears fan base has diminished because we haven't had a good game in 15 years. And now because Microsoft owns Bethesda, they are most likely going to spam Fallout, parentheses, which has also been diluted and bastardized since 2015, in parentheses, and Elder Scrolls, which, if Starfield is modern Bethesda, everything they make now will be garbage. Microsoft is screwed. Now, I typically choose somebody who has a conversation topic that is like typically disagrees with me, and I try to like kind of have a back and forth with their points when I do this comment corner. I find that to be far more, helpful. In this case, nobody really left a comment that was really debatable. It was just like, hey, Xbox is actually really cool and you suck. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can really engage with that intellectually. Here is a point that I did not mention, which is true. Bethesda has been making not good games. I'm not saying bad, but not good games for a while now. Bethesda has been coasting off of the success of Skyrim. I think Fallout 4 really did well for them, and the TV show has really skyrocketed the popularity of that particular IP. The problem here is Fallout 4 is probably one of the weaker Fallout games. It's okay. I remember even when the game came out, people were like, it's okay. It's more Fallout, I guess. Like, it's not anything crazy. I remember Fallout 4 was really kind of when the open world Bethesda kind of enthusiasm started to diminish. There weren't as many people excited about those games anymore. Obviously, Starfield has now come out, which everybody was like, for a long time, was saying, oh, they need to have a space IP. If they made a space game, if Bethesda made a Skyrim in space, imagine the adventures you could go on, the world you could explore. You could immerse yourself in these worlds, these planets that Bethesda could make. Oh, what a day it would be. And then they made Starfield, and I feel like everybody collectively went, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's not really the best game ever. I played it. I didn't really love it. I heard some people say they loved Starfield. I think the general consensus around that game now is it's fine. It's okay. They probably could have made it better, and that's not what you want to hear from the people who made Skyrim one of the best-selling games of all time. At one point, one of the most respected developers ever, Bethesda. You don't want to hear people go like, their next major IP, I mean, it is what it is. Like, that is really an underwhelming response. I played Starfield, and I did not fall in love with it. I played all the main faction missions and the main story, couple of handful of side quests that, weren't related to those that I was interested in. And I generally did not really enjoy Starfield. I've put 60 hours into it, and I felt like I've forgotten the vast majority of time that I put into it. It did not stick with me at all. And that's really unfortunate, considering I do typically enjoy Bethesda games, specifically stuff like the Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Fallout 3 and 4. Like, those are games that I generally enjoyed, but I did not enjoy Starfield. So we have a problem here with Microsoft. Not only is Bethesda now trending downwards in terms of reception with these open world games that are also very technically dated. Bethesda hasn't updated their engines or anything in a very long time, and you can notice that a lot of these games are known to be technically broken. Not only that, but Microsoft is saying we need a lot more games. We don't need these 12-year development cycles or whatever the frick for these games anymore. We need you guys to pump these things out. So when you're looking at Bethesda and you're looking at, it's taken them over a decade to work on the Elder Scrolls 6. oh, frick. Like, they're going to have to start pumping these things out, and these things are already kind of a technical broken mess, and they're already kind of lackluster in a lot of reception. Uh-oh. You're going to pump these out regularly? You're going to try to annualize Skyrim? This does not look good. That is a very bad idea. I can only imagine that that is a house of cards that is waiting to be toppled. You are absolutely blowing on that house of cards when you tell them we need the cadence of these releases to be much, much faster. That's scary. So I think this comment touches on that point of, I think Bethesda is going to become a factory release. Like, we're going to have to churn these puppies out. And that is not going to be beneficial for Bethesda. It's not going to look good when all of their games, people start getting oversaturated. They don't like playing those games that are 100 plus hours anymore and are the same games that they've been making for decades and haven't really evolved. And maybe Bethesda gets shut down by Microsoft. Like, that's kind of crazy. I think Bethesda was already struggling financially prior to being purchased by Microsoft. A lot of their games had not been very successful, and here we are. I think it is I can't even believe I'm saying it, but it is very possible that Microsoft looks to cut Bethesda. Like, come on. Is it not crazy for me to say that? I feel like it's not. I feel like you could literally look at any studio right now and be like, I think Microsoft is going to can them. Like, I think there's a legitimate argument for literally any one of them at this point because they just seem to be jumping around, which we will get to later in the episode. So I appreciate you, Mr. Marcus.exe_ for your comment, and I encourage everybody else to leave one as well if you are so inclined. Moving on to the news. This has been, man, let me tell you, this is weighing on me. There is so much news. So much news, none of it good. All of it is being really hyperbolized. So people are very, very upset about all of this news. And so you're hearing a lot of bad stuff. And so that means, guess what Henry has to do when he hears all this bad stuff in the news? I've been doing it long enough that I have to do very extensive research on the topics because most of the time, people leave out details. They don't tell the full story, and they focus in on some things that maybe aren't 100% accurate because they're really angry and they want to make it seem like their anger is justified. And hey, I get it. I've been there. I want to be angry at things too. Who doesn't like being angry? It's fun. But in this case, golly Wally, this is a lot. This is a lot of news. So let's start with, this is not the biggest news topic because we've kind of already touched on it in the last episode, but we are going to refer to layoffs confirmed with 300 people cut from Bungie. As of last episode, Bloomberg or Jason Schreier has reported that they were looking to make cuts. And then, of course, after the last episode was published, they did. So now we can confirm that's right. 300 people are now gone from Bungie, specifically 292 people. But they were let go from the Washington headquarters. Most of these people were on the Destiny 2 team, which, from what I'm reading, almost the entirety of the Destiny 2 team was let go. So that team is just gone. A portion of the employees that were severed were supporting Marathon. This does not include contractors. It does not include remote employees or satellite employees at different offices. This is simply only from the headquarters that we're talking about, direct employees from Bungie. So that's why when we say 292, people are reporting 300. Well, they rounded it, sure, but probably more people lost their jobs than that because we're not including a significant portion of the workforce that was already there anyways. So what's new, right? Bungie has been floundering for a minute now. This is the only real silver lining in this story is Bungie is not dead. Like, that's it. But let's be real. One can argue that it should have been dead a minute ago. The only thing that really kept it alive was Sony buying it. Clearly, the company has been suffering financially for some time. It's been struggling. It doesn't even have any games in pre-production. Nothing has. It's all in incubation, which is prior to pre-production. Essentially, they're just kicking around an idea. They're like, what if? What if we made another game? It's like that's pretty much what incubation means. So, in other words, there is no future for Bungie right now outside of Marathon, which we have reported on the podcast prior, is not really living up to expectations right now. The game has seemingly garnered a very hardcore fan base that really enjoys it. It's very interesting because when I hear people talk about Marathon, I hear, oh, it's one of the most intricately designed shooters I've ever played in my entire life. Like, oh, it's one of the most well-designed extraction shooters ever designed in eternity. Like, there's no better game out there than Marathon. When I hear people talk about it, I hear kind of talk like that. But then you look at reviews, and Marathon did okay. Not great, but not bad. It seemed that a lot of the onboarding was a problem. People seemed to be saying, oh yeah, I didn't care about this game, or I thought this game kind of sucked until I was like 10 hours in. And then I had a moment that I was like, I understand the vision of Marathon. And I don't think that that's very good in setting up a major base, is to have like a really bad onboarding that requires 10 hours of the player to really get like an understanding of what's going on. So Marathon has been struggling to make the numbers that I think they needed, and I think that's why we're seeing these cuts now, is Marathon just simply didn't live up to the financial expectations Sony had for it. But I think you were already looking at it from a bad perspective if you were expecting Marathon to do incredibly well as an extraction shooter, which is a hardcore kind of genre that is typically going to be more niche. It seems like that was an obvious thing that wasn't going to be some mainstream smash hit success. Obviously, you have something like an Arc Raiders that was a very big success, but it was an obviously streamlined version of an extraction shooter, where Marathon seems to be really doubling down on you need to be hardcore if you want to be involved in this at all. So, ultimately, what I'm saying here is Bungie has no future. There are no games in production right now. Sony clearly doesn't trust them to make anything else. There is no team that could make anything else. Like, all of the people who are there now are now focused on trying to support Marathon, which seems to have a very long road ahead of it to be anywhere near sustainable, because it is currently what seems to be failing. The numbers are not there for the game. So what do you do? You know, like, I think that you see a studio that just basically got shut down. Like, when Marathon is done, they are probably going to make smaller titles. You know, I would have to assume, if not just be dead. Bungie, after the Lightfall expansion, I went and I did my research, okay? So I am not a Destiny 2 aficionado, but I did put out a Destiny video not long ago, and somebody commented on it and said, hey, you're wrong, because I said Destiny 2 has not been doing well for quite some time. You know, like, that's obvious. We all know that, right? And somebody commented and said, hey, no. The player numbers have always been good, and the player numbers are doing incredibly well right now. Destiny 2 is doing great. And then I see when, you know, Bungie's getting shut down, Destiny 2 is coming to an end, I'm seeing people spam Destiny 3. We want Destiny 3. We got to have Destiny 3 in all these chat rooms for like Summer Games Fest and stuff like that. I'm like, clearly I'm missing something here, because I've been reading all these articles that said Destiny 2 is on the way out. Like, nobody's playing this freaking thing anymore. It's not making any money. Where are people coming from acting like this was one of the biggest games of all time? And they're like, I was like, you clearly all left. None of you were there anymore, right? So, half right, half wrong, right? And that's, of course, the case with everything, right? Destiny 2 is actually doing very well up until the Lightfall expansion. The Lightfall expansion, however, which was in 2023, 2023, which did very well, but then player retention completely fell off a cliff. It just didn't do very well at all after that. And you need player retention in a live service game. Destiny 2 has always kind of survived off of the backs of expansion releases. So they would release an expansion and there would be a massive pop off in revenue and a massive pop off in player numbers. And then those would subside. And then, they would do another expansion a year or two later and there we go. It would go way back up again. And so that's kind of how their revenue cycle worked for Destiny 2. You also had, cosmetics and season passes and battle passes and stuff like that. So people had ways to also invest in the game outside of those expansions, but those would be their major revenue pops, and that would be where most of their player counts would come from. Lightfall, for some reason, seemed to be bad enough that nobody just wanted to come back after the expansion. I have heard most Bungie fans, most Destiny 2 fans specifically, say, oh, Destiny 2 is the best it's ever been. And then they would release something new and they'd say, this is the worst thing that I've ever played. And then they would come back and it seemed like the most toxic relationship I've ever seen in the video game industry. And it seems like, based on the player numbers I'm seeing, yes, retention went down, but for the most part, it was kind of expected for the most part. Like, for many years it was. And then towards the end of Destiny 2's life cycle, so like Lightfall specifically, we don't have exact player numbers, but just a general assumption based on the information we do have is that we lost probably about 2/3 of players. They just didn't come back. For whatever the case is, after Lightfall, about 2/3 of players said, I really don't want any more Destiny 2 right now, and they just didn't come back. And that's when Bungie missed profit expectations by 45%, which is obviously very, 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 very bad. They had to lay off 100 people, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, which, by the way, that was 1 year after Sony acquired them. So Sony acquired them with the expectation that their profit margins were going to be 45% better than what they actually were. So Sony basically bought a freaking lemon. And then after that, it was just seemingly impossible for them to really keep up. They had to lay off another 200 people, and now, another year or so later, they're laying off 300 people. And that's probably a Sony mandate. Sony is probably looking at this branch, this studio, and they're saying, hey, you guys can't make money. Marathon's not doing very well. Destiny 2 isn't doing very well. We're not making money off of these things. We bought you one of the biggest studio acquisitions of all time, $3.1 billion, making, with the expectation you would make us money. And you aren't making us money, Bungie, so we're going to shut you down. Like, that is... You're not only losing us... You're not making us money. You are losing us money. So, very unfortunate, because I have a friend who actually texted me, Joel, if you're listening. Thank you for listening, sir. But he texted me and was like, oh, I was going to listen to your podcast. I was going to listen to see and, get the 411 on what's going on with Destiny 2, because he came back to Destiny 2. A lot of people have been going back. It clearly has a lot of people that have a lot of memories tied up into it. It has a lot of people who have, like nostalgia. I mean, this game has been around for over a decade at this point. It's been supported for over a decade. It's had very high highs. People have really enjoyed it. And now it's dead. And not only is it dead, but you're not going to get a Destiny 3. Like I said, there's no studio with this in incubation. Like there's no Destiny 3 being kicked around at Bungie at all. So if that's something that they were going to do, they certainly can't do it now, because they just laid off pretty much all of the Destiny 2 team. So they're definitely not going to be doing that anymore. So I look at this and I say, this is Sony putting down one of the most storied studios of all time. This is the studio that created Halo. This is what basically the studio that made Xbox a viable console player up until this point. Like, without Bungie, I don't think Xbox would be around at all. I think that this is the studio that grandfathered in the live service business model. Without this, there would be no Fortnite. There would, probably. But, like, these are the guys who started the trend of live service games. They are the guys who people looked for expertise on how to do live service games. This is a studio that clearly has very intelligent, good design people here. I think we can all look at the business as a major problem at Bungie. We have all heard incredibly horrible stories about leadership at Bungie, how bad they are. I know people within the company say these things. I know fans of the company say these things. Nobody seems to be an incredibly big fan of the leadership at the top. They have mismanaged funds. They have made bad business decisions. I think they probably lied to Sony in financials, saying we're going to make a lot more money than we expected to. These guys are not very good, and I think that they probably overstaffed. It seemed at one point Bungie had 1,200 people on staff, which is a massive, massive studio. And what were they doing? They were all supporting Destiny 2? That just seems like probably a headcount more than double what they maybe needed. They probably needed 500 people, I would think. That seems to be about the size of a team where you would expect Destiny 2 to be at. And 1,200 is way more. And of course, they had people working on other things like gummy bears and stuff like that. But this was most of their staff was on Destiny 2. That was their moneymaker. So I don't know. It is weird to see something that was such a big part of the gaming landscape for so long die. Not only Destiny 2, but Bungie. Like, I think that's the bigger thing here. Obviously, hey, I know people love Destiny 2. I'm sorry for your loss, but, like, I think the bigger loss here is Bungie, because you're not only losing Destiny 2 with them, but you're losing something like a Halo. You're losing that kind of prowess. You're losing that kind of studio powerhouse. And I think for Sony to be basically sunsetting them, this is some palliative care, It's rough. It's rough to see. It's rough to see, but it's a business, and if you don't put out the money, then you can't survive. And we've seen that with Microsoft recently, which we'll of course get into later in the episode. Well, was that a bummer of a was that a bummer of a story? Just Destiny 2 dying. Your memories are completely fading away, and one of the biggest studios or best studios in the industry is complete trash now. Was that not a bummer enough? Well, we're just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. That is only the beginning of this episode, so let's continue on. The next article we have is The Steam Machine will cost over $1,000. Whoa, my wallet can't wait to pony up $1,000 for just an HDMI cord that goes to my TV from my computer. Sounds like a good deal. Well, let's work our way through the pricing structures here, shall we? So a 512 gigabyte model is going to be $1,049. It is noteworthy that this does not come with a controller. So you will have to buy a controller separately, which you can get bundled together for the low price of $1,128. Yummy! Next is, of course, the 2 terabyte model, which I think most people would probably prefer at this point. Most games are getting pretty big. 512 is fine if you only play a couple of games here and there and are willing to manage your hard drive, but you're probably going to want 2 terabytes just for the sake of convenience, unless you're poor. The 2 terabyte model without a controller will be $1,349, and with a controller it will be $1,428. Wow. So we're going to read a couple of choice quotes from Valve that kind of give us an explanation as to why, because I think context is a very big part of this here. It's key to what we're about to talk about. So, quote from Valve: "We felt like we had a good understanding of how these costs might change over time when we first started sourcing them for the Steam Machine back in 2023. That understanding was born from the many years of data that we had about the evolution of PC hardware prices, primarily that it tends to get cheaper over time as new technology arrives, which of course we're all very used to. Consoles typically get cheaper with time. So you will probably remember a GameCube being $99 on store shelves at Walmart at one point towards the end of its life cycle, which was more than half of its original price. Now we're obviously seeing many price increases, which we will of course talk more about later in the episode. Component prices are skyrocketing, and it is getting to a point where even the manufacturers of these consoles cannot keep up with the prices, and so they must increase the price of the hardware themselves or take a significant loss, which is what Valve is obviously referring to. Continuing their quote, "Over the past year or so, that has changed quickly and significantly, with most visibly for RAM and storage components. There are a variety of reasons, all of which are affecting hardware products everywhere. The overall effect is that our original goal for the price of the Steam Machine is no longer viable. So the prices we're sharing today reflect the state of the world for manufacturing, or more accurately, it reflects the price of the components as we've secured them over the past 6 months. Price wasn't the only thing impacted by all of this. Availability was as well. There were periods of time where we couldn't source some of the components at all at any price. There were more than anything else. This has impacted the number of units we've been able to produce for launch." So, what we're saying here is everything has gone up sky high. RAM and storage specifically. This is, of course, due to the AI bubble, as some would refer to it as. We are seeing many data centers being popped up. People, specifically these bigger AI producers and manufacturers and storage and data and all that other stuff producers, are swallowing up the supply. So people like consumers simply just can't get their hands on it. The business behind this is, let's say Valve comes to, I don't know, NVIDIA and says, NVIDIA, I would like 1,000 chips of your most hardcore processor or whatever the case is for my Steam Machine supply. And we will be selling it at, whatever the case is, this price, and that's what we can afford to pay. And NVIDIA says, "Oh, Valve, well, that's a wonderful deal you have for me. But the thing is that Facebook, Meta, is over here, and they're willing to pay me 10 times that for the same processors because they need them for AI, and they see that they would be willing to make $1 billion gajillion dollars off of AI in the future, and so they're willing to pay that right now." And Valve says, "Well, I can't do that because I'm selling to consumers, and consumers can't pay $1 million bajillion gajillion dollars for a Steam Machine, so there's no way I can actually do that." And they're like, "Okay, cool. Well, then we're going to sell to the people who give us $1 million bajillion gajillion dollars. That's kind of our MO." And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, that makes sense from a business perspective, but because it is so cramped in the front of AI trying to take over everything and not enough supply for everybody else, we're kind of getting hit with the hard end of the stick here, which is these companies just simply can't deal with this. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so Valve has come out and said, look, we originally wanted this thing to be $750, or we haven't heard that exact figure, but they said specifically, we just increased the Steam Deck price, which they increased by $250. And they said, we kind of assumed that price increase was going to be like kind of what we added to the Steam Machine. So essentially what they're saying is it's $1,000 now. We were going to originally make it $750, which makes it certainly more palatable, correct? So here's the thing. Valve came out and they said, look, we can't subsidize this console. So this is where I start to get a little less generous with Valve, okay? So Valve comes out and says, "Hey, look, we can't subsidize it." And all these other guys, they're subsidizing their consoles because they're taking a cut of every purchase that you make on this thing. So if you aren't familiar, you have a PlayStation, for instance. If you buy a PlayStation, PlayStations are still cheaper than the Steam machine. A PlayStation 5 Pro is about $900. So it's cheaper than a Steam machine. Why is Sony able to produce these things at a lower price? That doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing because they're subsidizing it. So they're actually taking a loss on you buying the console. You're like, Henry, why would they do that? Because every single purchase, they get about a 30% cut. If you get a Netflix subscription on there, if you buy a movie, if you buy a game, if you buy Fortnite V-Bucks, PlayStation will get 30% of every transaction made on their PlayStation console. So they're not really making money off of the hardware because they're getting you in. They're getting you into the vibe of buying stuff on their console. And then when you make, 5 or 6 purchases at $70, 5 or 6 games here or there, well, they made their money back. Not only that, but they probably made some more. Now you're buying V-Bucks and you're doing your Netflix subscription through PlayStation. Hey, now they're making money. So that's how the console business works, right? So Valve is like over here being like, hey, we can't subsidize because we made an open platform. We're Valve and we believe in open platforms. So, that's why it's like, okay, let's be frickin' real here. 99% of the people who buy a Steam machine, which, by the way, the purpose of it is to be a streamlined console experience for PC. They're not gonna install another OS and freaking start buying games on Epic Games Store or some bullcrap. Ain't nobody doing that. Obviously, Steam has a near monopoly on PC gaming, especially on the Steam machine, where it is going to be preloaded with a Steam OS that is going to boot up and tell you to make a Steam account or sign into your Steam account and put all your games there, and that's where you're going to be buying stuff. Adoy. And guess what? Steam isn't some benevolent ruler who doesn't take a cut of purchases on their store either. So they're taking cuts from every purchase made on Steam as well, just like PlayStation. So guess what? They are like saying, we can't subsidize it because, we don't have a guarantee that people aren't going to buy games on Steam through this machine. Yeah, I guess not. I guess you freaking don't. But you have like a 99% guarantee. Like, I just can't imagine the vast majority of players would switch over to another gaming platform to play their games after buying a Steam machine. That just doesn't make sense to me. Most people who are going to be buying this are not going to be some hardcore PC gaming crowd. Anyway, at least that's not who it's marketed towards. Because let's be real, it's going to be more streamlined. This is a device that fits my lifestyle. Because I like PC. I like the ease of a console experience, the streamlining of a console experience. I don't want to have to deal with all the menus and getting things set up on PC. I have done PC gaming in the past, and there are some games on PC where I spend literally sometimes hours troubleshooting a game to make it run on my specific device. Sometimes those games are older normally, but in general, it can be a problem. And that's like, if it takes me 2 or 3 hours to do that in an evening, that's my gaming time. Like, that's beyond my gaming time in most instances. So like, I don't have the time to deal with that bullcrap. I would much rather start it up and just go. Have a good time. And PC gaming isn't always conducive to that. Now, Steam Deck has made that a lot more conducive, and I would love to have done that with a Steam machine. Here's the thing. Obviously, this is price restrictive. $1,000 for this machine is insane. Not only that, but this is a machine that is working at the same rate of power as a base PlayStation 5. Not a PlayStation 5 Pro. No. A base PlayStation 5. which you can get significantly cheaper, and guess what? Also will hook up to your TV. Now, obviously, you cannot play PC games with it, but if you are looking for power, which most PC players are, this is not that. Not only that, but you can get other hardware with more powerful specs for a lower price. So what it comes down to is Valve got screwed by component pricing. But could Valve have lowered this price and kind of taken a hit from subsidizing the console? Yes. I think that it's kind of silly that they didn't. It kind of makes little sense to me that they didn't. And I think people are going to be looking, especially in this economy, which, hey, I know it's a catchphrase. In this economy, I freaking know. But in this economy, I get it. People are stretched. Belts are tightening. And when you see something that is not necessary, or something that is, you could really get an equivalent or better experience for less money somewhere else, $1,000+, over $1,000, not $1,000, over $1,000 is rough. It is a tough sell. And when you're telling me, well, what are the real benefits here? Well, you get to play your PC games on a TV screen. It's like, well, can't I do that with like a gaming laptop? Yeah, you can. Like, you could probably buy a gaming laptop with similar specs for less money and just hook that puppy up to your TV with an HDMI cord. I know for a fact that, like, I hook up my Steam Deck to my TV. I have like a $10, $15 dock that I got off of Amazon, which, by the way, Steam charges like $80 or something nonsensical for theirs. But it's like, it's just a freaking HDMI port that hooks up to the freaking TV for the Steam Deck. But that stuff is easy to do. It's easy to do. I do it all the time, and it's way freaking cheaper. And I also maintain that I have the ability to take my Steam Deck on the go. Of course, it's much less powerful, so, it is what it is. But same thing with a gaming laptop. You could do that with a gaming laptop, and that is portable. Not only that, but it has the ability to be, like, do a bunch of other stuff, run other OSs and applications and stuff like that, which the Steam Deck most likely cannot, or it can do. But I doubt that you'd want to do it. Like, I doubt you're going to be typing up a freaking Word doc or freaking doing your taxes or some bullcrap on your Steam machine. Like, that's just not what you're going to be doing. So I've seen comparisons of this thing technically, and it does not look that good. I saw a Giant Bomb review of the machine, and they did like a side-by-side comparison of like, here's what Death Stranding 2 looks on older hardware or comparable hardware or whatever the case is, and it does not look that great for what you're paying for. Over $1,000? No, absolutely not. This is something that is unfortunately been hit by the AI bubble. Valve has even had to retroactively kind of walk back their specs over time. They initially promised it was going to be a 4K gaming at 60 frames per second, and then they were like, up to. Okay, we're going to change it up to that. So these guys clearly thought that they could get away with it, and it didn't work out. Or not get away. Get away sounds a little harsh, but they thought that they could make a much better machine at a much lower price. And I honestly struggle to sit here and tell you I would pick up this thing at $750. I think if it was $600, I would consider it. And that's a rough sell. Like, that, even to me, I'd be like, $600 really just to play my PC games on a big screen? And I can do that right now if I really wanted to. Otherwise, that's harsh. That's harsh. I genuinely don't know how this was ever going to be a big thing for anybody who wasn't already somehow invested in the PC ecosystem. Okay, so that's probably a better way of thinking about it. If I had no tie to the PC ecosystem currently, if I had no Steam Deck, if I had no gaming PC, if I had nothing, and I was myself and I wanted a streamlined console experience, would I buy a Steam Deck or a Steam machine, or where would the price point be for that for me? Probably $600 is where I'd be like, that's probably a really good deal. I'd probably say that. As somebody who has a Steam Deck, who has a gaming laptop, who has other avenues to honestly not only play PC games, but play most PC games that I give a frick about on the big screen. I see no reason to buy this thing at all, especially at a $1,000 price point. There's just no incentive to me. And I think PC hardcores that are going to be like, well, I want to play my PC games, but they're going to want a powerful device. PC hardcores are all going to be about power, and you're not getting power from this. You're getting a base PS5 level power. That's a 6-year-old device. 6-year-old device that not only is a 6-year-old device, but you can get cheaper. And it will also hook up to your TV. So it's a rough sell. It is a rough sell in a lot of different ways. And I just cannot see this thing being a success because of it. Moving on. So that's the first story about prices that people don't like. We have a couple of more. All right? Give me a minute. We'll get to them. Before we get to that, though, the last two stories I have kind of intermingle with each other. They kind of go together pretty well. So I'm going to save those for last. They're also our biggest stories of the week. So this is the last story that really doesn't tie to that, which is Xbox. Just Xbox. Just Xbox in general. First off, because Xbox has been going through upheaval in many, many, many different ways. So let's talk about prices again, specifically console prices again. Xbox price increases again. Microsoft is raising the price of the Xbox Series X and S by $100 for 512 gigabyte models and $150 for 1 terabyte models. They will also be discontinuing the 2 terabyte models. As of August 1st, 2026, the cheapest Xbox Series X 1 terabyte model without a disk drive will retail for $750 US. With a disk drive, you will have to pay $800 for an Xbox, by the way. An Xbox, a console that has clearly been dying over the past few years. That's right. You can pay the low price of $800 US just to get in on the Xbox action. That's right. The cheapest Xbox Series S model will now cost $500. By the way, this is the value console. So the console that they have always been pushing as like, oh yeah, it's not as good, but it is what it is. This is now $500 with the 1 terabyte model going to $600. Fun stuff. This comes after Microsoft has raised the prices for Xbox twice in the past year. So this is the third increase in the last year. The latest rise means that an Xbox Series X disk drive model now costs $300 more than it did in 2020, while Xbox Series X is 50% more expensive. Remember when consoles got cheaper as time went on because component prices went down? Things got better. Components got more powerful. And prices would go down on lesser components. That doesn't happen anymore. Moore's Law is dead, ladies and gentlemen. 50% price increase. It is now a genuinely good investment to buy consoles at launch. You will be making money. If I took out all of my money in 2020 and I bought all of the current gen consoles, I would be making 50% more money on them now. I could resell them and make 50% of my money. That is insane. That is multitudes better than the S&P 500. That is insanity. That is insanity. In a statement, Xbox blamed the price increase on current component crisis, impacting the consumer electronics industry, which has seen all three major console manufacturers raise prices significantly. Quote, "We hoped another price increase would not be necessary, and we have spent the last several months working with suppliers on options. Unfortunately, console storage and memory prices have increased more than 2.5 times, and we expect another doubling by fall of 2027. This is from VGC, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want a console, if you want anything with a chip in it, buy it now. Buy it now. If you need a refrigerator, if you need a smart refrigerator that has a chip in it, go out and buy it now. These things are not getting cheaper. Microsoft is now saying, we expect these prices to continue to go up. Not even in a small form. Another doubling, another 2 times increase by one more year, a year and a half. That's crazy. It means we're going to see more price increases from Nintendo. It means we're going to see more price increases from Sony. It means we're going to see higher price increases from all those little handhelds that you're expecting. It means that we are going to see all of the next-gen consoles, because the PlayStation 6 is expected to come out probably 2028 is what we're kind of seeing here, now that we know about the disc thing. That's going to be easily way more expensive than what you ever would have considered. It's probably going to be $1,000 plus, and which is the most expensive any console has ever been by a significant margin. And it's a really bad time to be strapped for cash in the gaming industry. At this point, I'm looking at any of these particular situations, and I'm saying, one, you need to get in on this now. Like, if you ever want a console at this price, or if you don't want to pay more for a console than it is currently, you need to get in now. And two is we are getting to a point where people are getting priced out easily. I mean, Steam Machine being $1,000+. Xbox is going up and up and up and up and up. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the business decisions they made. I think they probably got out of line when trying to secure processors and other components, and they had to get in at much higher rates than their competitors. And at least that's what I believe I've seen reported. And that means that they're paying exuberantly higher prices for this stuff than anybody else in the industry. And that's why you're seeing 1, 2, 3 price increases in the past 12 months from Xbox. And you're probably going to see more, because they're even saying it. Like, we're expecting to see another doubling of this nonsense by 2027. Hopefully, pray to God that supply meets demand at some point. By apparently 2027, end of 2027. And if you are expecting to have some kind of, unless you're expecting to have some kind of windfall of cash between now and then, it's a problem. At this point, Xbox is in deep trouble. Because how are you going to sell somebody on an Xbox for, at a minimum $500, and that is a gimped version of the experience, significantly gimped for $500. You're really looking at like a normal experience. You gotta sell somebody on like a $700 console, $800 console. Dude, I don't think somebody could freaking pay me to take an Xbox right now. Like, it's not looking good over there. This place is falling apart, and you're telling me you want me to buy a console? Not only do you want me to buy it, you want me to buy an expensive freaking version of this thing. Like, that's rough. That's incredibly rough. So, we're continuing to talk about Xbox. Why should you get an Xbox? Well, let's talk about it. Arcane and Undead Labs have been added to the long list of closures, along with canceling the Blade game from Arcane. Apparently, the Blade game itself slipped internally to 2027 and is running over budget, making it a prime candidate for closure. Arcane also is a studio that has not been doing very well commercially. So Deathloop did fine. It's an okay game. I played Deathloop. It's all right. It's not my favorite Arcane game. It's still Dishonored 2. But that genre in general has not been doing well for them. Dishonored 2 was not a success. There's a reason they moved on. Obviously, Redfall was not this Arcane. So this is Arcane in France that they're now looking at. They've already shut down Arcane Austin, which was who made Redfall. And now they're eyeing Arcane the proper because these titles have not been huge sellers in the past, and Blade is apparently a lot of money. Undead Labs, that's State of Decay, which they just announced State of Decay, which you may have considered. Oh, well, they just announced it, so they're good. Well, then you may have also considered, well, they just announced Senua, and they're looking to kill off Ninja Theory. So just because they announced a game does not mean they are not considering these guys for closure. Undead Labs always looked like a weird purchase to me. I was like, okay, this is clearly you're investing in a studio you think will be better, like Compulsion. That's kind of what you're expecting. It's like, oh, we're getting in on the ground floor of this. Like, we see a potential with this studio and we would love to just buy it up right now to make sure nobody else gets it and we get it at a cheap price. That's what it always looked like with Undead Labs. Undead Labs has made nothing with Microsoft, if I'm remembering that correctly. I believe Undead Labs 2, or excuse me, State of Decay 2 came out very shortly after being acquired by Microsoft, if I am remembering that correctly. Then State of Decay 3 was announced shortly after being acquired, and then we have since seen nothing until very recently. So this is a studio that has basically had no time to prove that they are anywhere near capable of giving Xbox what they want. But let's be real, State of Decay was never going to be some massive seller. It was, I mean, even State of Decay 1 and 2 were just like kind of cult hits. Like, they weren't these massive, Subnautica level indie successes or whatever the case is. So Undead Labs always seemed like a weird acquisition. Like, why are you putting so much into this? I never understood it. And now they will likely be shut down. I can't see a buyer for Undead Labs. Arcane, that's a potential. I see somebody wanting Arcane. Again, this is still all tentative. We don't know. And that's why we're probably going to take a brief cut here. This is something I've never done before, but I'm going to do it for you, ladies and gentlemen. So normally I try to get all this stuff out of the way. I'm a guy who likes to, kind of be done with my work so I can play. I'm an all work or no play kind of guy, and all work, all play. Am I misremembering that quote? I'm sorry. My head is all jumbled up. I got too much news up in my brain right now. But anyways, I work very hard and then I don't. So in this case, I am wanting to get the podcast done, but we know that the layoffs for Microsoft are going to be confirmed on Monday. Currently recording on a Friday, like I said. So we will have all that news drop on Monday, and I will cut back in here and confirm what we have seen. How about that? Does that sound good to you? Does that sound good? I think it does. So we're going to do some movie magic here, and I will see you. Well, how about this? If we learn about the layoffs, I will see you right now. And if we don't learn about the layoffs on Monday, then you're just going to hear me continue to talk. How about that? Okay. So in 3, 2, 1, we're going to fast forward to future Henry, or maybe not. Breaking news at this hour. That's right. It's me, future Henry. I'm here, or I would say back, but chronologically I'm just kind of in the mix, I guess. I'm not really back. So anyways, I am now coming to you from Monday. And that's right, fresh hot off the presses, we have Asha Sharma confirming what we already knew was going to happen. So massive layoffs at Xbox. Studios are no longer going to be associated. However, we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. It's actually a lot better than what I would have expected and what I think anybody expected. So we were all expecting doom and gloom. We were expecting heads to roll. And nobody was going to be happy here. This is a nightmare scenario for all of these major studios that Xbox has acquired over the years. And honestly, let me get into the headline here, because I don't think it's as bad as what I was expecting. Now, that being said, I'm going to open up with a really horrible thing here, but bear with me. So Xbox has announced that they will cut 3,200 jobs over the course of the next 6 months, with 1,600 jobs being laid off today and another 16 over the next several months. So be kind of shuffling people off into the night as, time progresses. That's about 20% of Xbox's total workforce, which is pretty insane. So a very big difference here. A lot of this is due to management restructuring that they're expecting to go over. They think that everything's kind of bloated. I think that is a nice way of saying we're going to try to have AI take over a lot of these roles, but no way of really knowing that. Asha in her letter states that there are sometimes 14 chains of management that takes, one decision, that makes one decision go through. She's saying, hey, if we can make it 3, that's what we're kind of aiming for, 5 to 3. So we're really trying to slash the level of management here so we can make more decisions and get things through the pipe a lot faster, which, hey, sounds like a good thing to me. I mean, a lot of people losing their jobs isn't necessarily a good thing to me, but I understand from like a very hardcore business mindset why she would feel that way. So I get it. So now on to the more so what we kind of already knew was happening, but what are the details here? So studios will no longer be associated with Microsoft. Now, I am very careful with my wording there. So what I have been saying for a while now is they'll be closed. Somebody's going to die in this culling that Microsoft is going through. No studio has been shut down. Not a single one. All of them have either been moved to have their own independence, or they have been sold, which is incredible, actually. I mean, I've said this before in the past, but most of these deals do not end up with studios surviving. Like Bluepoint just gets shut down. You don't find a buyer for Bluepoint, you just shut them down, that kind of deal. So what do we have here? We have Double Fine and Compulsion will both go their own ways. They have been given full independence, and they have been allowed to keep their IP, and they have also been given money to have a runway to finish their next upcoming projects, which is very generous, like incredibly generous. I didn't think Compulsion would... I don't think Compulsion's going to survive. I think Compulsion has struggled for a while to create anything that anybody actually wants to play. So I think that's a problem. Double Fine has always struggled. If you watch something like Psych Odyssey or just even follow their catalog of releases, you'll notice that most Double Fine games have really struggled to get off the ground, especially something like a Psychonauts 2. That was a real Hail Mary for them and only kind of culminated with Microsoft purchasing them. So I think Double Fine, as much as I love them, is still going to have a lot of problems moving forward getting games figured out. Ninja Theory and Undead Labs were two other studios that had been thrown out there. Ninja Theory and Undead Labs have both found investors. Both have found buyers that will buy the studios and allow them to create and finish the games that they were working on. So Senua and State of Decay 3. So both of those games will still come out. Those studios still get buyers. They still have investors. They continue to live on. Hunky-dory. Arcane is the only one that we really weren't super sure about even coming into this. It was still kind of a rumor of sorts that Arcane was being floated as a name that would be cut, and that is confirmed. Arcane will be cut as part of these restructuring. So Arcane, obviously a part of the Bethesda family, and it is now going to be a part of who the heck knows. All we know is it's being let go. It is not known yet because French labor laws are just simply a lot stricter. So they can say we're trying to get rid of it, but they can't actually say what's going to happen because they have to say and prove that they've gone through attempts to keep the studio and make sure everything's, A-okay before they get rid of them. And there's a lot of legal red tape that the French government requires of Microsoft in order to get rid of them. So that's why there's nothing specific there, but they have announced intent that they are getting rid of Arcane. They have not canceled any of these games. They still expect these games to come out. No games were canceled as part of any of the restructuring. Going back to Bethesda, speaking of Arcane, so they have officially come out and said, we will not allow you to work on anything else outside of your major franchises. If you're not a Fallout, an Elder Scrolls, a Doom, Quake, or Wolfenstein, which are the franchises that they specifically refer to in this letter, then you're not working on it anymore, which I honestly think is kind of appropriate. Like, I don't actually disagree with that. I think that, and people don't like to talk about this, but Bethesda was having problems before being bought by Microsoft. A lot of their games were not doing well. You had your Evil Withins and stuff like that just simply never really took off, never sold very well. Maybe people enjoyed the games, but in general, not very many people were like buying it. I think that's a very different categorization of success, whether people enjoy it and whether people buy it. But those are it's interesting. Quake is kind of left on the list as one of the major franchises. But beyond that, I think that Bethesda has not had a very good track record unless it is one of their major franchises that have kept the series afloat. So yeah, tell them to stop doing that bullcrap. Don't make another, whatever the frick it was that made it got a 3 out of 10. I can't even remember the vampire game from Arcane. Obviously don't freaking do that anymore. You're done. Like, just focus on what works. So I get that. And then the last kind of major thing I think is worth noting is Sharma basically said, hey, guess what the two things that continue to make us money no matter what are? That's Minecraft and that's King. So the people who make Candy Crush. So they are going to start reporting directly to me. They're our biggest tentpole things here now, which, hey, I mean, good for her. I mean, like that's really unfortunate that she calls out the two things that I think the hardcore community just simply could not care less about is the Minecraft game and the Candy Crush creator. Like, that is, it's not like Call of Duty was the ones called up and like, Call of Duty, you're reporting directly to me. Like, no, because Call of Duty doesn't always like succeed. Like we saw last year, Call of Duty has issues. So Minecraft is a guaranteed moneymaker. King is a guaranteed moneymaker. She wants to turn them into platforms, and more so, she wants to like make sure that these things are maximizing profit, which I don't think Minecraft certainly is. She wants to try to turn it into a platform. If you're going to turn something into a platform, it seems like Minecraft is the thing to do. It's like the closest thing to Roblox that they have in their platform or their portfolio. So like that kind of makes sense to me. So all in all, let's talk about this. All in all, the Xbox layoffs. What do I gather from this? I'm actually fairly pleased. Like, I don't think you can say that about a massive bloodletting in general, normally, but I think that you really could have seen this gone a lot worse. Like, you could have seen every single one of these studios close. You could have seen all these people out of jobs. You could have seen all these IP completely wrapped up in Xbox and never used again, because a lot of times when these deals go through or fall through, these companies try to wrap up this IP. They never want competitors to use it. They shut down studios like a Blue Point. They just say, just kill it. I don't want my competition to have this studio. Just get rid of it. So all these studios finding people to go off and continue to make their games, it really seems like Microsoft is being very generous to these studios, which I was not expecting. And then you have all these people getting laid off. That's easily the worst thing out of all this. I genuinely feel bad for all these people losing their jobs. 3,200 jobs is absolutely not anything to sneeze at. Like, that is a lot of people, and that is a lot of people whose livelihoods are gone. But if I have to be freaking real, Xbox was in a way. It was absolutely caving in on itself It clearly had no need for these little studios producing little games that made no money. It needed to focus on the bigger stuff. And it sucks that Phil Spencer went out and bought all these studios thinking that Game Pass needed all of them. And then he was kind of wrong. And now this management has to come in and say the hard thing and kill all these things. Like I think this is a necessary move. I think it's a necessary move for Xbox. It clearly needed a reset. I'm sorry that it had to cause so much pain for everyone involved. But in general, I think that it's being handled in a very, very generous way. And you really can't fault Asha Sharma for that. I still don't know how this necessarily translates into success, but it is a step in what I think is a necessary direction. I don't know, again, what the end game still is with Microsoft or Xbox. We still have to really figure that out, but I think it was very obvious that these studios just were not a good fit for what Microsoft wanted to do going forward, which is make money. And I don't think these studios were ever going to do that. So it's a sad day, but at the same time, I mean, it could have been so much freaking worse. So, like, do I have faith in Xbox moving forward? I don't know. but at least it can't get much worse? Question mark? I don't know. So, that is the news from the future. So, I'm going to send it back. I'm pretty happy right now. Wow. This is the happiest I've ever been to hear about mass layoffs at a corporation. Okay. Well, I'm going to send it back to my past self, and he's going to be confused about what I might think. So I'll take it back. All right. Well, hopefully I had good information there. I probably just told you about like half of their studios are dead, but this is me from before knowing that information. So maybe something cool happened. Like, I don't know. I honestly don't even know how you could possibly spin that. I don't expect any good news on Monday. So we'll see if I had none. Maybe I just had none. Maybe you just didn't hear anything there. So we'll find out. So that's cool. Next. So I won't talk anymore about that because I probably said something, outside of what I'm saying right now. Next is Xbox made a choice to reduce third-party investment of games moving forward. Now, I originally read this and I was like, oh, well, that's fine, right? Because I was expecting it to be more so like, oh, well, we're just not going to put as many third-party games on Game Pass. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense, I guess. They're kind of divesting a little bit from Game Pass, so it kind of makes sense to do that. And then I read a bunch of other articles that started coming out at the time. I was like, oh, no, they're doing more than just that. They're like basically shutting down projects that they were heavily funding at the time. So specifically, we're talking about IO Interactive. So this is the studio that just put out the very successful James Bond video game. They have had to undergo massive layoffs due to Microsoft pulling support for their new Project Fantasy IP/game. IO, I think, as a developer, has clearly cemented themselves as a very talented one after James Bond. It was a game that I think a lot of people were looking at skeptically because they've only ever really done well with Hitman, and people were like, oh, well, can they diversify at all into other kind of games? Can they kind of expand a little bit? And clearly James Bond, the answer is yes, absolutely, they certainly can. In this case, Microsoft didn't seem to agree. Microsoft felt the need to pull back from this particular project. And in all honesty, I kind of get why. Like, what does Microsoft truly get from these games? It doesn't help their broader goal now of really expanding their platform reach. Like, I think that is what they want, is they want people to buy an Xbox. And what is a third-party game going to do to truly help that? And you could say, well, it would probably be an exclusive. I would probably argue it would be a timed exclusive. And it's probably a lot of money for them to put into making a IP. And I think a totally new IP. And not only that, but I think it proves that it was a lot of money Microsoft was handing over to these people, because basically they had to completely shut down the project and let go many people, which means Microsoft was funding all of it. Like, without Microsoft, it simply wouldn't, it's not possible. And games like that of that size are simply too big for any other investor to come in and probably help. So this is collaborated with, other developers, specifically the former director of the Assassin's Creed series, or the newer director of 1666, that witch game that was shown off at the Game Awards, you may remember. He actually came out and said, "Oh yeah, this game 1666 was actually a Microsoft funded game, and they pulled out very recently, and so we had to find another publisher to help us out." Which, I don't know. After playing that demo, I would agree. You probably should pull out of that. I would say the IO one is far more eye opening there. It just seems like they've only made games people like, and they've proven themselves now, especially with the release of James Bond, that this was a potential big win for them. So it's very unfortunate. So Xbox came out and commented on this, and they said, Xbox insists that it is not reducing our investment in games, a spokesperson said, and they will spend about the same amount on games the coming year. They're just choosing different avenues in a way to invest. In the same time frame, Sharma sent out a surprisingly candid note. This is, by the way, this is a quote from VGC. This is where I get most of my news from. So Sharma sent out a surprisingly candid note to staff in which she shared, quote, realities that we need to navigate, unquote, claiming that Xbox's revenue had declined nearly $500 million in 5 years, and hardware costs were up 4%, and its studio system overextended. So, it's hard for me to believe that we're not reducing our investment in games. So it's possible, but it does seem like what Xbox is saying is we want to invest in very high return games. We want massive gangbuster IPs. We want to have a Halo that brings people back. We want to have a Gears that brings people back. And I have gone on record recently and saying that just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Halo is a dead IP, or not a dead IP, but a floundering IP. Gears is a has-been IP as well. You have Forza, which is still out there, but I think doesn't really necessarily compel a lot of people to buy an Xbox. It's certainly not a hardcore fan base game. It's more so a casual game. Same thing with like a Call of Duty, which you can't even put on other consoles. So this is, in my opinion, a harsh reality of, well, they're probably trying to really invest specifically in like a few handful of titles, which is very, very different than what Phil Spencer wanted to do. He wanted to make a million little baby titles that came out and supported Game Pass. And now Sharma's like, well, that clearly wasn't really moving the needle. And if we want people to see a need to come back to a console, we need to give them one. And a bunch of little reasons isn't normally going to do it. It's a big reason. Typically, when you hear this is a console seller, GTA 6 is a console seller. You hear this is a very, very big game. You don't hear, oh, well, I bought a console for freaking Silksong. Not really. You don't really ever hear that. That's a smaller game for a niche audience. Most people can do without it. Sure, maybe you're going to move the needle on a few people, but it's going to be really hard to do that. Not that many people are going to want the game. So it's what am I saying here? Well, we have a more expensive console. So now the barrier to entry to even getting in on this platform is now cost prohibitive. You now have all of the studios at Xbox scared out of their minds that they are about to be chopped at any given moment. So now you have all these people running around scared at trying to make games. Not the best environment. You're losing a lot of the studios that a lot of people really liked at Xbox. you're also losing all third-party investment. So other games now are being hurt. Like this is a horrible PR debacle for Xbox that continues to roll and roll and roll on for a seemingly unending amount of time. And we're going to get more on Monday. We're going to hear more about who's actually going to get cut, because we don't firmly know that yet, which I shouldn't speak on because I hopefully already did. But in this case, it really makes the PR tour that Asha Sharma made, like changing Xbox to Xbox, and like all that other bullcrap that she did to try and appease fanboys and make it seem like I'm listening to you. We'll do what you want, Xbox fanboys. We love you. I'll give you a big fat kiss on the forehead because I'm your mummy and I love you. Like that kind of mentality. It is unfortunate because it is now being completely undermined by all of the horrible stuff she's doing. And I would say that the horrible stuff she's doing is far outweighing the like, oh, well, I rebranded the Xbox logo. Doesn't it look pretty? Isn't it a pretty Xbox logo now? Don't you like the Xbox logo I made for you? Oh, I love you so. Like I don't think that that's really offsetting. Well, I shut down Double Fine. Oh yeah, Arcane, that studio's dead. Did you want to play Blade? Too bad. Like I don't think that is an equivalent exchange, let's say. So this is rough. This is rough. I would say we're not done hearing the bad news from Xbox. We're going to keep hearing the bad news. This is I mean, I don't know. It's just not looking good over there. It hasn't been for a while, and I don't know. What do you say to somebody who wants an Xbox now? Like, do you need help? Like, is this a cry for help? Hey, friend, I'd really like an Xbox. I was considering investing in the Xbox ecosystem. Sir, are you okay? Do you need therapy? Are you going through something right now? Should I be concerned for your livelihood, your life? This is it's just bonkers out there. I'm genuinely concerned to see what Xbox can even do. I think it's doomed. I genuinely think it's easy for me to sit here and say that, right? Like there's just nothing can ever happen, but like maybe one day they'll produce the greatest game of all time. Like, they'll make the greatest game ever, and it's like, oh well, there you go. It's enough. It's enough for me to want to go back and buy an Xbox now. Or they'll make like 500 of the best games ever. Maybe. I don't know. It's unlikely, but it's possible. But it just seems like you missed the boat. You missed the boat. I think at this point, people are just entrenched in the ecosystems that they're entrenched in. They've bought the games and associated them with libraries that they already have. And if you aren't there, then you are dead to them. That's just the way it is. So, let's move on, right? We still have the two biggest news topics of the episode to get to. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite two big news topics. And they go in conjunction with each other. So let's go chronologically, shall we? GTA pre-order bonuses and Ultimate Editions go live. For the low price of the Standard Edition cost, you can get it for $79.99 US, with the Ultimate Edition being 100 big ones. That's right, one Benjamin Franklin will get you access to the Ultimate Edition of GTA 6. Now, you may be asking yourself, Henry, okay, base game, $80. Cool. We've already kind of seen that happen with freaking Mario Kart World of all games. But okay, great. $80. Ultimate Edition. What is coming? What's with that? What's going on with that? What do I get for my extra $20 US? I'll tell you. The Ultimate Edition will contain cosmetics, vehicles, weapons, and shops and missions not included in the base game. Okay? We're going to get into that in a minute. Okay? Because that was a big controversy. People are basically saying this is like undeniably needed content that it's crazy that they took out. We're going to get into that in a minute. Let's talk about price. $80. Honestly, you people are lucky that this game did not cost $100. There were so many analysts that were like, bro, $100 is obviously the base price for GTA 6. There's no way they're going lower. And inflation itself, like, if you look at what games used to cost and factor in for inflation and bring it up to now, $80 is actually less than what games probably should be costing. Like, it should be around 90. So $100 makes sense for a game that you'll probably get hundreds of hours of content from, if we're including multiplayer in this, which we don't technically know is happening yet. And will probably be the most polished, most fully realized video game world ever created. This is the most expensive entertainment medium ever made. Billions of dollars have gone into the development of this game. One of the most successful studios and one of the most talented studios on the planet. There's just simply no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, this game will easily give you your money's worth for $100. Okay? Easily. So, what's the problem here with $80? Well, I'm just not used to $80. Heck, you're not? One, okay, this is not the first $80 game. Okay, we had Mario Kart World. Oh, but Henry, Mario Kart World technically could have been bundled with the Switch too, and then it would have really been like $50, which is probably a more applicable price for that game. Yes, that's accurate. But technically, they ripped off the Band-Aid. It was an $80 game. That's just flat out an objective statement. We've had an $80 game before. Other publishers have kicked around the idea of $80 games. The Outer Worlds 2 was supposed to be Xbox's first $80 game. The Outer Worlds 2. Come on. Like, anybody was really going to want to pay $80 for the Outer Worlds 2. But publishers have clearly given a thought to this, and they're clearly moving in that direction. Okay, I get it. $70 feels like it just happened yesterday. Okay, I understand that. And $70 is a lot. And if you buy games day one, yeah, dude, that's a lot of money to drop down on a game. But if you are true, most gamers do buy games day one. So most of you who are listening to this pay the $70. You don't wait for a sale. So if you are one of those people and you are looking at this game and you're saying $80 is just too much, bro, that's $10 difference from what you're normally paying for a game. Not only $10 difference, but $10 difference for a game that is likely far better than games you've spent $70 on in the past. Almost objectively, I am willing to bet that you've spent $70 on a game that's probably nowhere near as good as GTA 6 is going to be. So, why are we complaining? What is the problem with an $80 game here? Okay? That's what I would start this with. I would say you're lucky this game isn't $100. You easily would have bought it for that. You're easily going to buy it for $80. And I think you easily would have bought a base game price for $100. They would have gotten away with it easy peasy. And there's, I think, very few people who would argue that. I take that back. There's many people who would argue that. But I don't think there's many people who would conform to that idea. I think a lot of people would say, I hate that Rockstar is charging $100 for this game. It's so lame. They suck. I hate them. And then they would still buy it. That is the infamous screenshot of the Call of Duty forum or Steam group that was like, boycott GTA, hey, I hate GTA, and then the day of release, everyone in that Steam group was playing the new Call of Duty game. Every single one of them. It's infamous, and it is just a fact of the matter that nobody in the gaming community talks with their freaking wallet. They all just talk with their freaking mouth. They never actually follow through on what they say. They are blind fanboys who, even when upset, will still hand over their money and still want to play the newest, biggest thing. And GTA will be no different. So, now we can get into the Ultimate Edition. Is the Ultimate Edition worth another $20? So, a lot of people were pissed off. Oh, dude, I can't believe it. They're locking content that is essential for a GTA experience behind this paywall of the Ultimate Edition, which, by the way, referring back to what I just said a minute ago, I think $100 is honestly still a pretty good deal for Grand Theft Auto 6. I think you're honestly doing pretty okay. Even at $100, it's okay probably to pay like the $100 for this extra content and still be okay. Like, I think you're fine. But in this case, people are like, well, they're locking mandatory content behind it. So what comes to the Ultimate Edition? To recap, cosmetics. So t-shirts, clothes, stuff like that. Vehicles. You have some boats, some cars, some weapons, so like a pistol, a revolver, some shops, which is what people were really mad about. So there's a lot of cosmetics behind like a tattoo shop, a parlor, a clothing store that you can only access if you buy the Ultimate Edition. These shops will not be accessible unless you buy the Ultimate Edition. Bro. If that is truly what you're upset about, bro, I'm sorry. I don't care. Like that is so beyond me caring. I don't care about necessarily cosmetics in any game. Like, I mean, cosmetics are fun, sure, but do I really put a lot of emphasis on like, well, if this game doesn't have great cosmetics, if it doesn't have an infinite amount of t-shirt options for me to, or hairstyle options for me to customize my character, I don't want to play it. Like, that's a necessary part of the game for me. Absolutely not. 100% no. Like, there are many games where I have a default outfit and a default hairstyle for the vast majority of the game. I have no ability to change it, and I have no issue with it. I don't give a frick. And I get it. People want to LARP in GTA. That's like half of the experience, is you want to kind of insert yourself and do crazy stuff. I totally get that. I don't think I need to do that for the single player, though, and that's where all of this content is being locked behind. It's all single player content. So while it's nice to have the option to customize your character, I don't need it. Like, I don't care. I don't really care or need to pay an extra $20 to just customize my character. By the way, these are not the only shops in the game. I guarantee you there will be t-shirt shops and all that other bullcrap that are available to players outside of these shops. We don't know that, but even if people are saying there's not, they don't know that. So we're jumping the gun here, but I have to assume that there are cosmetics you can unlock in the game and you can purchase outside of these shops. If they truly locked all cosmetics behind the paywall of the Ultimate Edition, yeah, honestly, that's probably messed up. But even then, I would say I don't give that much of a frick, personally. But, like, I don't think that they have locked everything behind a paywall. So then you have missions, and I put that in quotes. It's a mission. Based on what I read, it's a mission, and it is basically a mission to go and refurbish older vehicles. So there's apparently a character that runs a select group of side missions that you can interact with, and he will ask you to go get a vintage car or a vintage boat or something like that and bring it back, and then you can access that vehicle. So in my personal assumption, this feels like a throwaway mission that I don't really care about, because I don't care about collecting vehicles in the game. I don't care about collecting boats. And unless these are like, if they were like, oh, it's a crazy story mission where you learn about the backstory of one of the main characters in the game or one of the main side characters in the game, and you're going to be doing crazy stuff in it, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe that's enough to really pique my interest. When it literally sounds like you're going to be told, go from point A to point B, get this vehicle, and come back. I think that sounds like I can pass on that. I don't need it. Oh, well, you unlock these exclusive vehicles if you do it. I don't give a frick. I don't care about cosmetics or, vehicle. Most of the time in GTA, I run up to the closest car that I can hijack and just take it. Like, that's it. I don't really think about it too much. Like, it's not like, oh, I need the best car to drive around San Andreas in or whatever the frick. Like, that's not how I play these games. So to me, this is not necessary at all. Maybe to you it is. But to me, I see no reason that's really going to incentivize me to pay this extra $20. Is it a gimped version of the game? I think you can make that argument. But to me, it's stuff that I think is optional enough that a $20 upgrade charge is honestly fairly within reason. And I don't see I don't see the reason to like freak out about it at all. Here is something that maybe you should be able to freak out about. So, shortly after this was announced, the Ultimate Edition, it was announced that GTA will not include a disc at launch. Yikes. Okay, so this is just going to be a code in-box game. Literally, you'll open up the box, and there will be a slip of paper, and it will say, input this code into your PlayStation, and then you will download the game. That is how GTA Physical will work. So, not much of a physical if you consider it anything. If you consider that physical, I mean, it's a physical piece of paper, but like it's not really physical. So, over time, people kind of went back and forth on this, and they were like, oh, well, somebody reported, oh, there's going to be a disc at launch. It's just going to be like a month later. Like it's going to be in December. And it's because, oh, well, GTA they don't want anything to leak. So if there aren't physical copies out at store shelves, there's nobody at freaking Walmart is going to take a copy from behind the desk or whatever and play it a week early or whatever the case is, and then it's going to leak. Like that's what they're trying to avoid. And then people came out and they said, well, actually, that's not true. They're not planning on ever putting a disc in this thing. And it kind of went back and forth for a little bit. And now we know there's most certainly not ever going to be a disc version of this game because Sony, which is the major platform that this is going to be coming out on, where most sales will happen, has basically stated, yeah, we're not going to make discs at all for the console anymore. So GTA was essentially the primer for this. They were priming consumers for an all-digital future. You should not expect a disc with your purchase anymore. And, that's kind of how things are going to be moving forward. And we're going to be probably the first major game to just not have a disc. Okay? So, no disc at a physical edition. I would be talking about this extensively if it wasn't for Sony dropping the news that they were going to go to an all-digital future. Because this would be like, why the frick is GTA doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Like it seems to be just a silly thing for them to do that only really benefits them. That's kind of effed up. Because let's break that down. So no disc. What's the benefit for Rockstar here? It prevents game leaks. Which, hey, Rockstar is probably pretty protective of GTA 6. It makes sense. It's a big game. They don't want anything kind of messing that up. It allows them to work up until the launch. So, in most cases, games go gold. When you go gold, you have a version that is going to be on the disc. Most development studios continue to work on the game even after it's gone gold, and that's where you get your day one patches. So games typically continue to be developed for a very long time, even after they go gold. It's just that's the 1.0. That's the version that everybody's going to have on the disc before they have to install that day one patch. So it allows them to not have to stop and, go gold or whatever the case is and then continue working on a patch format. They can just continue to work on the game in perpetuity until the launch, where they can then upload the 1.0 patch. And then number 3, which I think is the big one. It takes the retailer's cut away. So you can still buy a physical copy of the game, but at a retailer. But why would you? If you're just going to get a code that you're going to put in and it's just going to be digital, why would you do that? Most people are just going to go digital. So every retailer, Walmart, Target, Amazon, whatever, wherever you're buying it, they are going to have a 30% take for every copy sold. And so when you do that, secondhand sales, baby, or that your Rockstar's losing 30%. Sony's losing 30%. You got to share that, baby. You got to share the love, share the money, split the pie. It's another piece of the pie that gets taken out. So they're just disincentivizing people from that. Not only that, but you've completely killed secondhand sales. even with like a game key card. So Nintendo has game key cards in which, yeah, you get a cartridge, but you immediately pop it in and it just gives you basically access to download the game off the store. That's all it is. You still can hand that key card over to a friend. They can pop it in their Switch, and then they have access to the game. So it still allows for secondhand sales. With the GTA code, you can't do that. You use that code, it's done. It's a dead code. You will no longer be able to use that code at all. So it's absolutely murdered secondhand sales. Analysts have come out and they've said, hey, not having a disc, nobody's going to give a frick. This is all talk. Nobody's going to actually stop wanting this game because it isn't on a disc. 80% of sales are currently digital, so it doesn't matter. I have to agree. There is no way that this hurts the game. It will easily just be like, well, how do I get it? Okay, that's fine. You know, like that's how most consumers will be reacting to this. There is also retailers are apparently concerned that supply for consoles will be constrained for the holiday season because of GTA 6. Thought that was an interesting little aside. Obviously, we've been talking about on this episode in and of itself, like Microsoft is like having trouble producing consoles. Steam is having trouble producing consoles. There's a component shortage, so of course that's going to be a problem. You know, like now people are having trouble buying these consoles, they're having trouble making these consoles, and now people want to buy GTA 6. They haven't bought a PlayStation 5 yet. They've been playing their PlayStation 4. There's still millions of people playing on PlayStation 4. So they're going to all have to upgrade to PlayStation 5 in order to play the game, or maybe they've just been out of the video game system for the past several years. They haven't even been caring about it. And they're like, oh, well, I have to come back in for GTA 6. And here they are. They have to buy a console. Well, millions of people are going to have to do that. And so it's going to be such a big launch, and there's such a tight supply strain on consoles and computing. It's going to be real freaking hard to get your hands on a console. So that's going to be fun. So in general, I think that the outrage behind this whole GTA situation is a little extreme. This will not be the first in-code box release. This will not be the first $80 game. This will not be the first $100 Ultimate Edition that locks content away from the player. These are all, honestly, I'm not going to say normal, but they've definitely happened in the past, and people really don't freak out that much about them. $80 games, obviously, it's a problem, but I think you're getting a good deal here with GTA 6. Like, that's just a fact. I think the Ultimate Edition being $100, bro, I see $100 Ultimate Editions all the time. Honestly, I've seen like $120 Ultimate Editions before with less useful content. At least this has some content that they're locking behind the $100 Ultimate Edition. Like, this is not always the case. Sometimes you'll just get like, I don't know, a digital art book and the soundtrack, which you'll never actually listen to, and then like a different gun skin and a different cosmetic skin. And it's like, that's $120. And maybe you'll get access to the season pass too. I think that typically comes along with like 120. Like that's typically what I see for that. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. And of course, a lot of people freaking buy those things. So it's not like they don't work. Like the fact of the matter here is just silly. It's silly people are getting that mad about it. I get it. Times are tough, but you're going to pay the money, and they know you're going to pay the money. And if you're not going to, if you're not going to speak with your wallet, then it doesn't matter. If everybody said, yo, this is the most, like, there's no disc in the box, I refuse to play this game, I think we would have a really different conversation we're about to have about Sony, because they wouldn't see the need to completely cut out all physical copies of games moving forward from 2028 onward. There wouldn't be a need for 80% of consumers to buy digital and only 20% to buy physical. I'm sorry, but you're not speaking loud enough. Like, there's too many people who don't give a frick about a game in a code or buying a game digitally or whatever the frick, that you are a minority at this point. And you're probably going to buy the game anyway. And they know that. And Look, everybody wants to talk about this subject right now because it is GTA 6. And if you talk about GTA 6 because it's such a big game, you're going to get clicks. And that's just the fact of the matter is people are trying to ride this algo. People are trying to talk about this into the dirt because people are going to click on it. And I think it's a little overblown. I think it's honestly, you got out easy. I was expecting this base game to be $100, not $80. So I think, all things considered, this is a pretty normal freaking thing, minus the disc not being in the box. That's still silly. Like, no matter how you slice it, that's still kind of silly. But still, I think that there's avenues that you can do to circumvent that. Just buy the game freaking digitally. Just assume, if you are that frustrated about the disc not being in the box, just assume this is a digital only release. If you are that frustrated by it, just assume it's a digital only release. It will take up 90% of your hard drive, and you will happily download it anyway. You will happily clear out half of your freaking hard drive, or 90% of your hard drive, so that this thing can live there in perpetuity forever. That's just how the gaming community is going to work. It's how the community at large is going to work, and it's how most people who play video games are going to work. And most people who play video games, by the way, are not hardcore. They're casual. And this is a casual game. It just simply is. So I think that it's unfortunate that all of these things happened, but I don't think that they're like these crazy things, that are like out of the norm or unexpected given the information that we have now about the current state of things. So, I don't know. That is my thoughts on the GTA 6 thing. So, that leaves us to the final story that we have. Where are we on time? We are an hour and 37 minutes in. Yeah, and this is going to be a doozy. Oh, man. So, we have a lot to talk about here. So Sony decided to completely destroy any remaining goodwill they had left. So, where to even start? So, let's start here, shall we? Well, let's actually see here. Aha. Okay. We'll start with this. Sony is discontinuing all physical versions of games starting in 2028, January 2028. Quote from Sony, this is from VGC. This is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as a general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today. In its latest business year, ended April 2026, Sony Interactive Entertainment reported that 78% of full game sales were digital-only downloads. Wow. So, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. So I am a physical supporter. I have a lot of physical games. I'm looking around my room right now. I have games mounted on the wall. I have games that I just purchased from like a sale at GameStop, buy two get one free for like a pre-owned games. Like I sell games back to people. I use Facebook Marketplace. I go to GameStop when there's a good trade-in deal. I buy a lot of physical games. I get games for Christmas. I do all sorts of stuff that's physical. So when Sony announced this, it was a massive gut punch to me. This is obviously going to rock my world. It makes gaming more expensive for me. I have to buy digital. I don't have retailers that could compete with other prices to lower things down. I typically do see physical games often are lower prices than their digital counterparts simply because Walmart, Target, Amazon are all competing to give you the lowest price. Whereas now the only way to get a game will be digitally through Sony, and therefore you have to pay what they're charging. There is no alternative. So the only thing that's preventing you from buying a game at that point is just, is it a price you're willing to pay? And Sony doesn't have any reason to actually discount them any further. So this is obviously very bad. just in and of itself. But we're not even halfway done yet. Sony then announces that they will be deleting over 550 purchased movies from people's digital libraries. From VGC, on September 1st, 2026, all purchased content related to the production and distribution from Studio Canal will be removed from PlayStation users' video libraries due to an end of a content license agreement. So these are movies that you've purchased. You will not be refunded. This includes stuff like Terminator 2, John Wick, several other big films. I'm actually not as familiar with Studio Canal, but they have the rights to a lot of big films, it seems, and they license them out to Sony for a limited amount of time. Now, I've never bought a freaking movie on Sony's digital platforms, but it's obvious that those movies are there for a licensed amount of time, not forever. So as soon as those licenses expire, your content expires. You no longer can watch the film, which is very unfortunate. In a lot of game aspects, if a game is taken off a store shelf, it is often because a server is no longer being supported for it. The game can no longer run. There is an extended cost with continuing to have servers up for games for an extended period of time. For movies, that is not the case. There is no technical limitation to having a movie on an online database. There is no extended cost with keeping up a movie on a storefront that you can download it from. The only thing that is preventing you from downloading it is simply a licensing agreement. That content is still easily watchable in its current format. So this is a very different thing of just pointing out licenses are a problem with digital ownership. And this is where we get into a very big problem with digital ownership, which is that you're owning a license. Like, licenses are what you're buying. You're not actually going to be buying ownership of the item. And that is explicitly stated when you buy anything on most digital storefronts, not just PlayStation. PlayStation, it is explicitly stated in the legalese when you sign up on their user license agreement. You say, when I buy this, I realize I don't own it. I'm only kind of renting it from you. I'm renting a license to utilize the software. And that is very frustrating because it leads to situations just like this where something can just be taken from you. And there's nothing you can really do about it. And I think most people don't give a frick about this. These movies are probably watchable elsewhere, like on Netflix or something like that. Or if you really cared about ownership of this movie that you wanted to watch, you're certainly not watching it on your Sony movie account. Like, how many people are actually using that to like watch all their films? I would highly doubt it. But it is certainly an insult. I think most ownership of film, most people kind of understand when you buy a film, you're buying the film. But like, because that's just what we've been used to for decades, is you buy a DVD and you own it forever. You know, like that's kind of the understanding. But I think it's a little bit different now with digital ownership. That is not the case. And that is the same thing for video games. So Sony, in conjunction with saying, well, we're no longer going to be offering physical discs, now they're saying, oh, well, also, we just want to remind you, we can also take away your digital purchases at any point, and there is no repercussion for you. It is just gone. And that's really scary. That's a really scary thing to consider. Well, you say, Henry, that's a 1-2 punch, but surely it can't get any worse. Well, let me tell you. Sony then announced in another announcement, they then came out and said that they are closing the PlayStation 3 and Vita stores. So PS3 and Vita stores will be closed in all countries starting July 2027. So you have 1 year left to get your games in. This comes after they previously attempted to close it in 2021. So that was 4 years ago. So they gave you a long time. Like, I was very surprised they gave you this long. I thought it was maybe going to be 6 months or something like that. They gave you 4 or 5 years. And that was reversed. That decision was reversed after major public backlash. And so Sony said, okay, you can have it a little bit longer. Like, we realized we made a mistake, and they left the stores open. So the reason they're closing this is for a variety of reasons. One of which, and I think a very good reason, is that the store is just simply out of date. So let me walk you through it. If you wanted to buy something on the PlayStation 3 or Vita store right now, if you have a credit card associated to your account in any way, so like right now, I have a credit card associated to my PlayStation Network account. If I go into the PlayStation Network on the PlayStation 3, I will not be allowed to purchase anything on the PlayStation 3 store because my current Sony account has a new card associated with it. So the problem is that the old infrastructure is not set up to deal with the new cards that we have today. So essentially, if any card is used currently on the PlayStation Store for PlayStation 3 or Vita, it will throw an error and it will say you can't buy anything. We don't support that format. And so the only way to actually buy something is you have to go in and delist your current like cards on your account. You have to remove them, and then you have to add funds via PlayStation gift card. So I think that you can do that by buying funds on the PlayStation Network. Actually, no, you can't, because you have to freaking have a credit card associated in order to do that. Well, frick, yeah, you have to go to a physical retailer, and you have to buy a card to then insert into your freaking account. And then you can buy things using gift card funds. That is for the PlayStation 3 and Vita. That's the only way to get anything out of them. So these storefronts are absolutely bonked, and they need to be updated. And simply stated, probably nobody is buying anything on these storefronts. The Vita was never very successful, and the PlayStation 3 is 2 generations old. There's simply not very many people who are probably utilizing those consoles anymore. There's incentive to leave, and there's just bigger, better things out there. So most people aren't using these platforms anymore. Here's the problem. Or not the problem, but essentially moving forward, the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 storefront is more modern. So you're not going to have issues with that whole credit card system. Not only that, but Sony will continue to update it. So if there is some new credit card thing that gets thrown in the mix and they have to update it, Sony will just do that. And all your purchases from PlayStation 4 onward will be associated with your PlayStation account, and you'll be good. You won't have any issue here. Here are the two issues with this. Number one, Sony could update the store for the PlayStation 3 and Vita, make it viable, and make it make it so that you can actually pay with your current credit card. They could do that. It's just simply more money than it's worth. It's not worth updating. There's not enough people going back there, so it is what it is. They're not going to try to save it. Makes sense, in my personal opinion. I can't imagine. I mean, I know I'm not going back to the PlayStation 3 and buying things. So, like, there's no way other people freaking are, or at least not a lot of them. So, like, I understand that. The number two thing here is that this is still being shut down, and you won't be able to buy anything. So, you can't buy anything, and they had a statement, so, quote, "To ease the transition, players will still be able to download previously purchased content after closing date for the foreseeable future." Foreseeable future is a really unfortunate choice of words there, because that doesn't mean forever. That just means, you can still do it right now. Okay. That means that eventually they will stop supporting the ability to download games that you've purchased. Does that sound familiar? That sounds like they are stripping your ownership of those games, because you no longer will have access to them. You can, I guess, get a hard drive and download every PlayStation 3 game digitally that you own and put it on an external hard drive for the PlayStation 3 and I guess have that. But that is probably something most people are not going to do, probably something that a hard drive is going to have a hard time containing, and it's not very, accessible solution for something that most people expected to have easy digital access to. At that point, you basically own a physical copy of it because you have to have it on a hard drive in order for it to exist at all. So this is Sony essentially saying you will lose access to all of your digital goods at some point for PlayStation 3 and Vita. So you may want to figure that out. And in conjunction with movies being removed because of licensing issues, in conjunction with digital ownership completely being the only option as of January 2028. This is scary. This is not necessarily what I want to see. This is a company that clearly did not foresee a digital future and has kind of been bumbling it a little bit. You know, you look over at the PC market, right? And they've been doing this digital only thing for decades, you know, not decades, but very close to it. You know, it's been 99% physical over there for a very, very, very long time. Disk drives don't even freaking come in most laptops, computers anymore. They just don't. Who's using them, right? So in this ecosystem, they've been surviving, and that's fine. And they've also been figuring it out for decades. They kind of transitioned to a digital future a long time ago, and it's kind of been the norm since then. Sony never really foresaw a clear digital future, and they've been the option for people who have wanted a physical purchase option, a hard ownership option in terms of, you know, hardware for decades. You know, people's collections are embedded into this ecosystem. Like, I now look around at all of my physical copies and I realize that all of them are eventually going to be passe. They are no longer going to be useful at some point. And I knew that to an extent, right? But I guess it's just kind of a really big realization to me that like everything I own physically is inevitably going to degrade, disintegrate, and go away forever. And you know, like that is that's where I kind of start being conflicted. It's like, well, I should have really seen that coming, right? Is an all digital future was obvious. PlayStations are starting to be produced without disk drives by the norm. Like that's just normal. It is something that we know 80% of consumers buy digitally, only about 20% buy physically. So we're in the clear minority here. Most people simply don't care about physical releases. And we knew that the next generation had a total possibility of being an all digital console. So why is this such a problem? It's almost like people are acting like we never knew. Like it was some kind of crazy thing that they're making this transition. And it's obviously not. It's obviously been telegraphed for a really long time. If you follow any industry trends, if you follow any analysts, if you see what these companies have been doing, have been saying, you know that they were going to do this. But it just feels like no alternative. Sony has shown no interest in giving an incentive to go all digital. And then you are also hit with this reality that there are a lot of downsides to digital ownership. So, I was speaking with a friend about this, Alex, my buddy, if you're listening. And he talked some sense into me. So I remember when I heard this news, I texted him. I was like, Bud, this is gut wrenching to me. Like I really am disappointed. I think a large part of it, looking back, was emotional. Like this is an understanding that my gaming experience that I've had since I was a child is going to shift dramatically. There is no going to GameStop anymore and seeing, you know, the covers of games on a shelf and wondering, oh, what could be in that game? You know, what experiences or adventures await me? There is no Christmas morning where I unwrap a new game, where I unwrap Uncharted 2, or Borderlands or something like that. Dragon Age Origins. Those are all like the same freaking year too. That was an awesome Christmas. And and I go downstairs and I play them in the basement for the next 5 weeks and never shower and never eat. Like that's completely bygone. There is no sharing of games. I give games to friends. I allow them to experience other games that I value. And there's a communal aspect behind that. There is eventually going to be a time where I go to conventions and I don't have a physical game store or, like a secondhand store that's there to show off their wares and sell their games. Like that won't be a thing. And that is another communal aspect of video games to me, is going to those conventions and seeing those people selling those games and looking at all the people looking at the games together and being like, oh yeah, I remember this game. Oh yeah, like how much is, oh that's great. Like, haggling with the guy, trying to get a better price. Like that's a communal aspect that's going to be gone. And that's an emotional response. It's not necessarily what is accurate within the industry, right? And so, I was like, bro, I can't believe this. Like, this is such a gut punch for me. This really sucks. And he was like, bro, like PC gamers have been dealing with this for like a long time. Like this is a norm for PC gamers. Like if you're trying to be a PC gamer, this is an obvious thing. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I think I may be reacting a little bit too much, right? But let's go through. And he kind of said like there are benefits, and he even was like pro digital. He was like, there are reasons that I would prefer to have a digital experience and not physical. And we're going to get into that in a second. But let's go through and let's talk about all of what this means, right? For the gaming industry, okay? So, first off, let's just touch on this. This is also a VGC article. Sony is, if you didn't know, the people who make Blu-ray discs. So they are the people who make the things that your games are put on. So they make most of the Blu-ray discs. So they have already moved their biggest plant into stopping making these discs. They don't make them anymore. They're now making, what is it? Micro lenses. They are shifted to a micro lens, which, by the way, is a major component in AI infrastructure. So essentially, Sony saw the writing on the wall. They said, let's just shift over to AI. Let's make some money off that AI boom, baby. So this is something that has been in place for a long time. This factory has already been turned over. They are already producing these things. So this means that Sony not only is probably going to be making a lot more money off the shift for this factory, but they are also not going to change their mind. This is a set in stone thing. So, moving on to what I was just talking about, I felt like that was necessary to bring up. But let's talk about all the games businesses that will be impacted here. This is going to impact all like boutique physical people, like limited run games. I am 8-bit. I occasionally buy games from these people. I just bought Hi-Fi Rush from Limited Run Games. I really loved Hi-Fi Rush. I wanted a collectible form of that, so I have a physical copy of it. Those guys will no longer be able to have a business at all. They won't be able to. I Am 8-Bit makes vinyls. That's, I think, where they make most of their money, actually. But they occasionally do publish a game physically. Obviously, you may have forgotten about these guys, but Gamefly. I love Gamefly. Gamefly, you can get a used copy of a game super cheap. You don't even have to be a subscriber to their like monthly mailing service. So if you aren't familiar with Gamefly, Gamefly is an older service where you can actually order games physically sent to your door, and they'll mail them to you, and you can get them for a pretty cheap price for a monthly subscription. So if you're wanting to try out a lot of games and try out the newer releases for a discounted price, a much reduced price, Gamefly is an excellent option for you. You will no longer have that option. Obviously, GameStop is going to be hit very hard. The local stores that are physical, they are obviously going to have to find a way to continue onward from this point forward. So the last generation they're going to have anything physical is PlayStation 5, and then beyond that, they're not going to have anything that they can add to their store shelves. So GameStop obviously has been trying to diversify. They've been trying to move into trading cards. We've talked about GameStop several times on this podcast. GameStop is a problem waiting to happen. This was obviously an inevitability, and it is something that GameStop knew was going to happen, but they are certainly not happy about it, and they are going to be reeling from this one. I can't imagine. I haven't looked at the stock price for GameStop, but I assume this announcement really hurt them. So you're going to have a lot of businesses that are tangentially responsible now, tangentially related to these physical game sales. Obviously, people like Walmart and Amazon and Target and stuff, sure, they still sell physical games. But let's be real, their physical game section of stores have dwindled significantly over the years. They clearly don't see it as much of a profitable sector anymore for them when most people are buying physical or digital anyway. So, and by the way, those guys are also like multi-billion-dollar corporations. I don't particularly feel any loss for them because they're not really doing me a lot of service most of the time. So cool. So a lot of businesses are going to be impacted by this. Most of the ones I'm sad about are the ones that are better for consumers. I'm not saying GameStop is necessarily always, but you can utilize GameStop to get some good stuff. I do regularly do sales with GameStop. You can get a game on a good deal from them. This is clearly a big business move from Sony. So 100% of profits from here on out will be 100% digital. So they no longer have to share those profits with big business. No Amazon or Walmart or anybody is getting a 30% cut anymore. So it's a monopoly. With physical games, they had to split them. And it also allowed for people who, physical retailers to discount the games and make them cheaper. You look online right now, and God of War is going to be not $100, but full price, 100% of its full price. And if you go on Amazon, you'll probably find it for 30% off, 40% off, something like that. It's an older game, and Amazon's trying to get rid of stock. So they're more than likely to have it on sale, but Sony's not going to do that because you can't get it anywhere else digitally. So why would they? You can obviously wait for sales, but sales aren't always guaranteed to be incredibly great. And now that Sony is the only place you can go for these things, it's not like Steam where you can technically go to Epic Game Store or Good Old Games and buy a copy of the game somewhere else. If you have a PlayStation, you're locked. So you're never going to go anywhere else. So you have to buy from Sony. So this spells out bad stuff for game preservation. The ownership we've mentioned is now uncertainty. It ultimately hurts consumer rights. So you can't share games. You can't sell games. Your ownership can evaporate at a moment's notice, and you're likely only going to have them for a few decades. I don't love that. That hurts me. I would prefer if I buy a game, which that is the language they use, is buy. You're purchasing the game. You buy the game. You feel like you should own it for more than just a couple of decades. And then if you ever want to go back and play it again, you can. In this case, I think that most people don't. People have, in the hardcore community, always been fighting for backwards compatibility. And what we've learned through the stats is that not many people really take advantage of it very much. They just don't. It's very rare for a player to actually pop a PlayStation 3 disc in their PlayStation 4, or that's not possible, but a PlayStation 4 disc in their PlayStation 5. That just doesn't normally happen, which is unfortunate, but is simply most gamers are just playing the thing they like or the thing that is new. And so backwards compatibility is just kind of, not a big thing for most people. It is for me. I still go back and play older games, but that's just not most people. And I can't say that I pull out my PlayStation 3 and play it all the time. Most of the time, if I really want to go back and play a game that's a long time old, I will buy it on Steam for $3 or something and just play it on my Steam Deck or something rather than actually get it on the PlayStation 3, like play it on the PlayStation 3, pull out my PlayStation 3, hook it up to my TV, and then, actually get the disc out and put it in. Like, it's far more convenient for me to just spend $3 on a Steam sale to actually play frickin', I don't know, Callisto Protocol or whatever the frick. I don't know. It's not a good example, but you get it. I was thinking of Alpha Protocol. That's what I was thinking. Play Alpha Protocol. But anyways, so that's not fun. Collectible markets is another thing that I think is going to take a huge hit. That kind of goes in conjunction with what we were talking about earlier with like IM 8-bit and limited run games. I also see this as a problem for like PSA. So I have some graded video games on my wall. I think they're fun. I like the idea of graded video games and kind of treating video games as a sought after collectible. That's interesting to me, and the market is also very interesting to me. I would not recommend getting in it, and I think that it is a very hardcore and niche consumer market. That also there are some scummy people trying to manipulate, in my personal opinion. But like in general, I enjoy collecting. Like I said, I have Hi-Fi Rush just because I wanted to have a physical copy of it. I have, looking at my shelf right now, I have a physical copy of the collector's edition for Valkyria Chronicles. I have the collector's edition for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I have a few Japanese copies of games that I can't even play because they're region locked, and I just like looking at them because I like the cover art of a Japanese game compared to what I got in America. Like, I think that collecting can be fun, and there are some games that I like collecting. And so something like a PSA, something like a WADA, which is now PSA, but those are dead. Or at least they will be dead, and it doesn't help them very much to see this happen. So in general, most of these, if you haven't noticed, are enthusiast edge cases. They're a small portion of the community that will even care about them. And I've said that as I've kind of been going through them. So most casual consumers don't care about owning a game forever, since most rarely even care about going back to them in the first place or collect them. They don't have enough games that they need to resell. So reselling a game isn't something that they really care. Most gamers buy 2 to 3 games a year. At that point, just throw it in the trash. Like, there's no point. Digital ownership, or the lack thereof, is already seen as a common thing in most entertainment spaces. So you stream your movies, you don't ever really own TV, you just kind of watch that and stream it as well. And your music, you've had MP3s of your music on your iPod for decades at this point. Who's really buying an album? Like, really the only people who are buying vinyl are like weird hipster like collectors, And apparently that market is still somewhat profitable, but in general, like, that's a niche market. And PC hasn't had a physical option in many, many, many years, and their base does not seem to mind. So we'll probably adjust. The most you can say is that it's removing an option for people who want it. But they're such a small minority, it just makes sense for Sony to kill the dang thing, They get more money from it, and that's all that matters, Still, when you look at it as a whole, it is 1/5 of video game consumers. 1 out of every 5 consumers of a video game still buys physically. I'm obviously one of them. So 80% still means 20% is still buying physical. Is that a significant minority? Absolutely. But it is over $1 billion in annual revenue that Sony is cutting out of the market. And that still seems like a heck of a lot. Now, obviously, Sony has done the math, and they've said, hey, yeah, it's $1 billion in revenue, but if all of those guys transfer over to digital or whatever, we have a monopoly. We get 30% of all these purchases. It's probably going to be $1 billion in revenue if all of them switch over. That's probably how the math works out in some way, shape, or form. They've probably done it. I'm not saying I don't know the math, but they've probably done it. They're bigger, smarter guys up there than me, and they've done the math, and they've said it will probably make us more money to just go ahead and kill the dang thing. And that's what they're going to do. So this was always an inevitability, all right? But the reality has hit me hard that it's going to change the habits, the traditions, the associations and memories that I have with games as a physical medium. And like most kids don't have that nowadays, They grew up with an iPad or a PlayStation maybe, but they played Fortnite and they don't have a physical copy of Fortnite. They downloaded it off the store for free. They played Roblox. They did the same thing. They have no memories of going into a brick and mortar store. Their mom ordered everything through Amazon, and they're never going to actually care about physical games. All right. This is a part of the medium that simply is for old people now. It just is. And that's normal. And the problem is here that it hurts me emotionally, it hurts me financially, and I'm going to have to rethink those things moving forward. It hurts me preservation wise, and I'm a big advocate for preservation as well in video games. I think video games should be preserved, but the thing is most video games can be preserved digitally, so you don't have to have a physical copy of a game. And actually, the Video Game History Museum came out and said like this is actually not that big of a deal for us. Like I know everybody's looking at us and saying they're not preserving your games, but like in general, even the Video Game History Museum was like, honestly, we prefer digital copies because most people play the games after a day one patch, and that's the game they remember. And so like that's the games we're trying to preserve. So digital copies are actually where we prefer to preserve things. The problem is Sony will, if they do not have better options moving forward, push people to piracy, which I don't want to encourage. I would prefer people to get things the legal way. But in this case, games will go offline, and if they have not been preserved yet, if they cannot get pulled off the network, or if somebody can't crack them, then we'll lose them. So at this point, we have no sign that that's going to change. We have no incentive to think otherwise. So a story that came out not too long ago was that Microsoft was considering that they would have a program that allowed you to transfer all of your physical games into digital copies, and then you could even transfer ownership. So if I had the disc and then it gave me a digital copy, and then if I gave it to a friend, it would remove ownership from me and they would have ownership. I don't know how you would figure that out in an all digital world, who has what game, but I don't know. I guess the smart people at Microsoft were trying to figure that out. This would be honestly a much nicer, I would be much more okay with that with an all digital future if Sony came out and said, look, we have a record of every physical game you've ever put in a console. You can have a digital copy of every single physical game you've ever bought. And if you do that, I have no reason to be upset at that point. Like my physical collection is now digitized. I have ownership of it, at least in that form, and it makes the blow a lot softer. I still think that we still have a conversation about preservation that's necessary, about ownership that's necessary, but I don't think that anybody should be particularly, it would soften the blow a lot. Because now I feel like I may at some point have to rebuy some of my physical games. Oh, well, I have a copy of Hi-Fi Rush physically, but F me, like I can't play it on my PlayStation 6. I'm going to have to buy a digital copy of it if I ever wanted to do that. Like that would be really frustrating to me. And I don't love that idea, but if Sony did per se give me full access to all of my physical games digitally, I don't think it would be as traumatic of a transition, but I find it difficult to think that Sony would do that. I think that's tough. And I think if they were going to do that, they would have said something. I think this is Sony ripping the Band-Aid off. I think everybody's moving this direction. I think Xbox is going to be doing this. I think Nintendo is going to be doing this. I mean, people like to be saying, oh, well, Nintendo likes to go against the grain. Yeah, they do, but like they have game key cards for a reason. They are trying to get out of this ecosystem the best they possibly can. They want an all digital future too. And I actually have moved further into digital on Nintendo than anything else because Nintendo games never go on sale. They've actually been going on sale a little bit more recently. I've noticed. But like in general, Nintendo games typically don't go on sale. So if they don't go on sale, I can't. I'm you know I'm never gonna get a good deal on them. So I might as well just buy digitally. So it just makes it easier on all fronts. I'm not saying I'm a 100% physical gamer. I've never said that. But I do tend to do what makes the most financial sense for me. That is typically how I make my purchasing decisions. And physical has just for a long time been a really good way to make financial decisions with games. Games are expensive. They're expensive. $70 a game is too much, especially when you play video games as much as I do. You can't afford it. A normal person cannot afford it. And I'm pretty freaking normal. So I can't afford it. But I can afford it if I buy games 30% off, 50% off, or I resell a game to GameStop or on Facebook Marketplace and get 80% of my cost back. Like I can do that. I can subscribe to a PlayStation Plus and play 100 games a year off of the subscription service or something like that. And, or a Game Pass. Like those are very cost efficient ways for me to play a lot of games. But like we currently don't have a model that's really going to fit that. Game Pass has shown that it is too expensive to do a streaming video game service. You can't do it. Sony is not necessarily willing to put a lot of its bigger games on those services. So if you want those, you still have to buy it, a la carte. And I don't know. It's going to make me have to take a step back and be like, well, I really have to see how we approach this all digital future because right now, as things are, like there's no refund system, or the refund system at Sony sucks. Like comparative to something like Steam, it's a horrible refund system. Digital ownership options not very good. They have a long way to go to catch up with better digital storefronts that simply have more options, more consumer focus, and I need to see how Sony wants to address this digital future because right now I don't think that they're very they're equipped to handle it. I just simply don't trust them. I don't trust them to do the most consumer savvy things. I don't trust them to do it for a long time. Sony has proven that they will be incredibly cocky without competition, and currently they don't have competition. And that's what they're doing right now. They're just like, who cares? Like Xbox has so much bad stuff going on right now. We really can do whatever the frick we want. And it's just the only reason that this is different is because this is a herald for everything. This is the herald for everything to come. This is not just Sony that's going to be doing this. Sony's taking the brunt of the PR for saying this first. I don't even know why they felt they needed to do that. But Microsoft is going to be doing this for their next generation console. Nintendo will be doing this at some point. Who knows when because they're Nintendo, but they will. So we are at a point. This is a juncture, and I hear a lot of people talking and saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to get out of physical games. Like if there's no physical games, I'm just not going to be a gamer anymore." I just simply don't believe that. I think people are going to make the transition. I think you're going to see, "Oh, this is the new GTA. I have to have it digitally. Okay, well, I'll play. Okay, well, I still want to play Call of Duty with my friends. Okay, fine, I'll buy it digitally." Like it's just going to be what people have to do, and so they'll do it. I don't think people are going to jump out of the hobby for this. I think that's an extreme overreaction. People are acting like this is the end of days. I think it is a massive shift. I think it is a massive anti-consumer shift. But it is a massive shift that we all should have seen and have seen coming, and we just simply have to accept it. It's honestly surprising to me, going through everything that I've said so far, that I was even as affected by it as I was, because I should have known. I should have been prepared for that announcement for years, and I simply never fully comprehended exactly what it meant to be fully digital. And I think we have a long way to go before we are in a point where I'm confident being fully digital. And I just simply don't think, especially after the 1-2 gut punch of, oh yeah, I'm Sony and we just removed 550 movies from people's libraries and we're not refunding them, and you don't have any other avenues to purchase them. And we just shut down the PlayStation 3 and Vita store. And yeah, you can still buy stuff there, but after a while, like, or you can still download stuff there, but after a while, you're not even going to be able to do that. That's not a good combo for this announcement. It really does not sit well. And it's, again, something I'm going to have to deal with. And I guess I'll have to navigate it as we go. We still have 2 more years to figure out exactly what Sony's plans are for this and to see exactly how things work. I'm sure there will probably be like a overpriced disk drive that you can attach to your PlayStation 6 and you can still play all of your older games. But that's still yet to be seen. We still don't. Maybe there will be some magical system where they allow you to transfer all of your physical games over. I would love to see that. But right now, we just simply don't know. We just simply don't know. And it's a scary, uncertain future we're looking at, especially if you consumed games like I did. So it's not there yet. We still have time. But it is a sad moment. At least, change is scary, right? Change is always scary. And that's just where we are. This is a really, really, really big change for console gamers. So that is all of the sad, sad news. We're 2 hours and 20 minutes in. That's a long episode, and that's just news, baby. That's why we're skipping impressions this week. It's probably for the best anyways, so the only impressions I really have are Xenoblade Chronicles 1 Definitive Edition. I've been playing that. I'm about halfway through it, a little less. But I love to, or I prefer to, talk about games that I've finished completely, so I can give like a full, representation of the entire product. So I don't love talking about games that I haven't played already or haven't finished. Obviously, it's a long game, not only that, but I just haven't had a lot of time to play as much recently. So I've really been struggling to find any time to play Xenoblade Chronicles. Like, I've been like, oh, maybe I can play an hour here today or something like that. So it's just, it's rough. It's rough out in these streets for a gamer with no time on his hands, and many, many JRPGs that are 60 plus hours long. But in this case, this is an old JRPG that is, from the Wii. And it honestly holds up pretty freaking well. Like, I'm actually really surprised how invested I am in it and how much I enjoy the world and the characters and the environments. And I'm not going to say like the combat is anything too special. There's definitely issues I have with it, and maybe it'll change as I go. But like, the story is moving at a very good pace. There's a lot of twists and reveals, even early in the game, I feel like are very well done. And it's exactly kind of what I wanted from a JRPG. Like, in all honesty, this reminds me, and to be frank, it is from kind of that era of JRPG, but this reminds me of games, like specifically JRPGs that I would play as a kid, as on the PS2. Like, it kind of reminds me of that in the best way. And I kind of dig that. I think that Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is considered like just kind of the vanilla of this series. 2 is very controversial. I hear people talk a lot about 2, but I don't ever hear any specifics. I always hear people say like, "Oh yeah, 2 sucks." Or I hear them say, "Yeah, 2 is my favorite game of all time." So there's not a lot of people who are just like lukewarm on that game, and I'm really interested to see where I fall on it. But in general, I'm enjoying Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I think, I'll continue to play it. I'll try to finish it, and I'll hopefully finish it in a normal amount of time and be able to move on to other games. It's always the frustration of starting a long game like that. Is I'm like, okay, I'll enjoy this for like 10 hours, and then I'll be like, oh, my backlog. Oh, it's just staring at me in the face. Like, I know I have another 50 hours that I have to play this game, but like, I have so many other games that I have to play. So like, that's where I'm at with Xenoblade Chronicles right now. Is I'm like, oh man, like, I hope I can get to the really good parts of this game soon. Not that anything's bad currently. It's just kind of like a cool JRPG. So I'll hopefully have more to talk about next time with that. But in general, this has already gone on for a very long time. My throat hurts, and it's a very depressing episode. So I hope that I've informed you. I hope that you've had a fun time listening. I hope maybe you've learned something, you thought about something, you want to play video games. Maybe I'm your best friend. Maybe you want to send me money. That would be cool. All that would be great. So consider those things, and Friend, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.